And we are live. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever time zone you might be in. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Black Powder Podcast, the only podcast where a white guy from Arkansas and a black guy from California sit down weekly to talk about gold, guns, and god awful government. The Black Powder Podcast is a proud member of the Firearms Radio Network, and as such, tonight's episode is sponsored by Primary Arms. PrimaryArms.com is your one-stop shop for all things 2A. They got AR uppers, they got AR lowers, they have full firearms, vest, gear, ammo, magazines, they got all the things. So visit PrimaryArms.com because, as you know, a well-regulated militia, necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well regulated means well supplied. So go get some supplies. Go to primaryarms.com. Use promo code FRN. That does not stand for Federal Reserve Note. It stands for Firearms Radio Network. Use it, save some money, and support a sponsor that supports the 2A and the Black Powder Podcast. Marcus, how are you doing, brother?
I'm doing great here from cold Southern California as we have the possibility of the snow level dropping to just under 1,500 feet in
Man,
elevation.
that oppressive
And
white snow's coming, man. You
hey,
know? Yeah.
you know what? I like my black streets black and
Yeah.
not with that frosty white stuff. As far as black ice goes, I support black ice.
Black ice all day long.
Yeah, black ice.
No white snow, definitely
no
black
white
ice.
Yeah. So we're doing quite well. And would you like to proceed forward with our distinguished guest?
Yes, we have a distinguished guest tonight. We are wrapping up I guess this is our 4-part series on LP presidential hopefuls. We have had Mike Tremont, we have had Lars Mapstead, Chase Oliver, and now we have Joshua Rodriguez. Joshua, welcome to the Black Powder Podcast, sir.
Hey.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So usually we kind of open this up. This is, as you can tell, a little bit more of a laid-back podcast. We don't try to take ourselves too seriously here. This is more of an opportunity for people to get to know you as a person, as a candidate, as a hopeful. Always the first question we ask here when we're talking to somebody like you is kind of tell us how you became a libertarian. How did you come to libertarianism?
Yeah, I always believed in third-party platforms, and so I ran for mayor in 2018 in my city, and again in 2020 for United States Senate, and so I always chose third-party. But I didn't get a lot of traction as I thought with the primary Democrats and Republicans, and so once I switched to actually Democrat to run for the new congressional district in Colorado, I found out real fast that politics just gets immediately dirty. And so I ended up switching to Republican, same effect. To me, it's like you have these values. Where do they lie? It's like you're pro Second Amendment, right? Can you really be a Democrat? And then as a scientist and running on a Republican platform, it just turned into like, it was pretty messy. And so I found Libertarian Party is the party to be, the way to go. I believe in a lot of the points associated with libertarianism, like ending war. If you say abolish the police, right, in the Republican Party, they're just going to be like, no. But you get a lot of acceptance if you say abolish the FBI, though. That's the crucial thing.
We were saying that a long time ago, weren't we? Yeah.
Yeah, libertarian all the way.
Yeah. Okay. So you've run for mayor, run for Senate, right? And so now you are a hopeful for a presidential pick from the LP. What are kind of your big issues? Like, what do you hope to focus on in your campaign should you get that?
1 second, guys.
Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, I guess he's going to get his notes for us.
I'm on camera.
It might be a family. It's a family event, and I wholeheartedly empathize with him on that.
That's right. So for our listeners at home, Joshua Rodriguez is a real person in a real home. We now know that he's not a robot. He's not an avatar. He's absolutely 100% real.
Yeah, the kids are like acting up, and I have 3 kids, guys, and
okay, cool.
8 dogs, literally. So it's like,
do you really have 8 dogs?
Yeah, it gets chaotic. Like the dogs
I
are
can
literally barking like
imagine.
crazy right now.
I love that 8 dogs part. What are they? Hold on, stop.
Oh, they're all Shih Tzus. Yeah, they're Shih Tzus.
Oh,
Oh
you
wow,
have 8
you have
Shih
a
Tzus. That's a
Yeah,
lot of
it's just
shit.
use.
That's
yeah.
a
It
whole
is a
lot
lot
of
of shit.
shit. Yeah.
It's a lot of PN. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I the top you were talking about the top 3 issues, correct?
Yeah, but we went off into dogs now. We might have the dog podcast. What you think, Marcus? You want to just break off into
I
dogs now?
love German Shepherds. I've never had a
Yeah.
Shih Tzu. I've had miniature Schnauzers, but I think I have an affinity for German dogs. But
There
I
you go.
love Japanese anime, so I kind of dig the Shih Tzu stuff too.
So
Oh
Josh,
wait, is it Japanese or is it Chinese?
I think it's Chinese, right? Aren't they Chinese?
Shih
Oh,
Tzus?
yeah. Yeah,
I
Shih
don't
Tzus.
know. We
I,
have a Bichon Shih Tzu mix. So we have a little bitty dog too.
I
Um,
apologize to my Mandarin brothers out there. I did
yeah.
not mean to.
They can deal with it. They won't even see this. Chairman Mao's going to suppress this podcast. This isn't making it over there. Yeah, we can say whatever we want to about the Chinese government. They're not going to.
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
a big thing on Twitter right now about, eating dogs, but that's a whole different topic. It's kind
Yeah.
of scary.
I mean, if worse came to worse, but other than that, yeah, I'm not recreationally ever eating one of my favorite animals on earth. So
I'm not going to
that's
try to, but like I think if it came down to like a SHTF situation, I don't know if
yeah.
like Shih Tzus or what to have, but he's got 8. I mean, so that's kind of he's got a little like farm going over there.
Okay, just one more thing to interject real quick before you
Sure.
get back to you, Josh. There's a old saying in Alabama where my parents are from. It says, "As long as you have a dog, you'll never be hungry." So, with that being said,
Josh, well, let's get back to
Joshua,
your
get
3
back-
big
yeah.
issues.
Yeah, I think a lot of the police reform issues, but lately though I've been frustrated with simple things like labor rights and stuff like that. And so people talk about minimum wage. They talk about like how long can a person work before it starts being equivalent to overtime. Like if you're at your job right now and you're working 14 hours, maybe after the 10th hour you should start getting overtime, but if you have to work the next day and you get 5 hours of sleep, like maybe you should get compensated for that 5 hours you really didn't get sleep, right? And so those sorts of things. Like I was talking to a constituent about Amazon. They make you sit there and do your job, right? Packing boxes for 10 hours straight. That's your shift. And you can't wear headphones. So it's just like, I feel sorry for Gen Zs right now. Like you can't even find a way to entertain yourself at your job. It literally is just packing boxes, standing for 10 hours. So it's like, where's worker rights? But with Ukraine and the amount of money going overseas, that's just like frustrating to me. It's especially when you start talking about Ohio and the railroad and all those issues you see that people are just like, my water is contaminated, but there's no funding from FEMA to even check to see if it's okay. And it's just like, that's ouch, because we know that, President Biden's shaking hands with Zelensky right now. Hey, I got you. They need $1.5 trillion. We spent $2 trillion in Afghanistan. And so that's another big issue. But I think if you're on Twitter, most people you're going to constantly see excess amount of, police issues. A lot of people say, let's abolish the police, or, we need to get rid of qualified immunity. And it's, for me, it's like, I don't think we should get rid of a qualified immunity. I personally think at this point, like, we should just straight up abolish the police, and that will effectively solve the problem. I have like no faith in the justice system whatsoever. And if you just look at the libertarian.com, lp.com, you'll find tons of platform issues that we can just talk about forever, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, so the kind of abolish, defund the police one. I'm definitely. I'll, for the record, I'm not for that, and one of the reasons why is I always worry about the vacuum. Okay, this isn't a Michael White podcast about me, but I'll worry about, if you take local police and local policing out of communities, that sounds like a good thing in theory, but then you have a vacuum filled by possibly the federal government, right? So it's an interesting situation. We could do a whole podcast about probably talking about what that reform could be like. So, as you go into these 3 issues, as you're moving forward toward convention in 2024, what is kind of your message for the Libertarian Party in general? Like, what do you think as a candidate you bring to sort of unify perhaps a divided party right now?
Yeah, that question comes up a lot. And I think if you have someone that's willing to participate in the party, no matter what their beliefs don't align with you 100%, they're at work. You should, put them to work. And so there's going to be a big debate about like why am I banned, or what, why can't I get traction or nominations based on, this particular group, or, those sorts of things. But I think if we can unite the party, we would have to look at Gen Zs. And so I think we should wholeheartedly find a Gen Z person and say, if they raise their hand, oh, you're it. You run this libertarian party in Arkansas now. It's all literally all yours. Let them take over the party. And so when you're trying to say, how do we get traction from the next generation, and how do we get voters, that's how you do it. You just literally hand the party over. Obviously, millennials are going to be the next generation to lead, whether you like it or not. I've talked to so many constituents now that, I can't get into management, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you're a leader. You're the expert in your field now. There's no one else. They're literally, 60% of the community is going to be retired. 65+ year olds are retired now. And so millennials are leaders, and we need to like really engage the next generation to step up and help us move forward. But we have to train them too. So.
Okay, so let me interject real quick, because
Sure.
as the one true Generation X member in this podcast, Michael is a, what do you call it, Millennial X?
We found out that I'm a zillennial. I'm a
Zillennial.
micro generation from
Okay.
82 to 85. We looked it up. We found it out. Like, I'm a special thing, Marcus. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys are all special, because your generation and the millennials brought us all kinds of definitions of things that that we as Americans have come to believe, and I find it interesting. But I will not have the Chuck Norris of generations, which is Generation X, not have a moment of leadership in this country. We are the next generation. You guys, millennials, you're coming up. I'm gonna tell you.
Like I said, I get to be a special one. Like I had a
Right.
Gen X childhood and then a millennial like adolescence. You know what I mean? Like I'm the
Yeah.
elder millennial. I had a landline, man. And like we were still blowing in Nintendo tapes. So I mean, like, come on, man. It was hard. It was hard times. We had VHS, dude. I know how to use a rotary phone, Marcus.
Okay, so I wanna dip right back into the whole police law enforcement thing real quick, because me myself, I have my issues with law enforcement growing up as a black kid and wherever I grew up in the suburbs, and I saw what fails in law enforcement. And my father was a cop, and he quit the profession because his life was in danger because the way certain cops treated him when he needed backup and things of that nature. But I have to wonder, as a parent, if we abolish the police, and it goes to the point Mike was making, what do we replace them with? I'm 100% against qualified immunity. That needs to be killed, like George Floyd. It needs to be strangled real quickly and just die.
Dude, hot take, Marcus, on that one, man. Yeah, a hot take on that one. Yeah, Josh. So, if what would be kind of like if you were obviously from a presidential perspective, it's not like maybe those local policies can be enacted directly, but what would be your suggestion to local communities, kind of to replace that with?
Yeah, you have to think of like police alternatives, and so obviously, if you legalize recreational medicinal drugs, boom shakalaka, you get to abolish the DEA just like that, right? And so you find ways to find a police alternative. If you have like a self-driving car, is it likely that you're going to get pulled over for a DUI, etc.? Are you really going to break any laws? It's driving itself, and so now you don't need traffic enforcement, and so now you eliminated more levels of law enforcement. But I think for me, when I say abolish the police department, I really do mean abolish the police department. There's no way around it. The municipal police department should not exist, and it should not be dictated by an authoritarian mayor, So if you're going to think of an elected official, maybe go sheriff, employ the county sheriffs. They're elected, right? So if they do a bad job. But if you're looking about your own personal communities, develop communities that are gated with private security. We shouldn't have police force, any type of police force in public education system. It's just a bad idea. And so the alternative to that would be hiring a private police force, right? They're trained professionals. They don't do their job, or if, their contract just gets eliminated. And so when we think of police alternatives, I would never say a federal police department would ever come into your city or town. I believe in state rights. And so I believe that police are only there to investigate. And so at the state level, there'd be a huge police force investigation team helping you out. But locally, individually, police do not stop violent crime. They only respond to it. And so
Sure.
your best defense is self-defense. And that's why I believe in the Second Amendment. Right now in my city, Colorado, we have abolitionist. She was a great person during 2020 protests. She stepped up, got elected, and guess what? She wants to abolish police, and now she's co-signed with legislation to take your gun rights away. So imagine that, a Democrat who wants to abolish the police and take your gun rights away. So when you ask me if I can, why choose libertarian, that's the definition. You can't have both worlds, right?
Okay, so I understand your logic because, my personal experiences, but my question would be, wouldn't it be better to have police have to get bonded and insured to do their job?
There was a gentleman in my city. There was an active shooter, right? The active shooter said, "Oh, I'm disgruntled against the police," took an AR-15 and started shooting up our old town, assassinated a police officer, right? And a guy named Johnny Hurley, I don't know if you remember him,
I know
got killed by the police department. Well, what happened was there was an internal investigation. Magically, the police chief is in charge of internal investigation, said that they did everything okay. Not a shock. And so you would hope that the DA who said, "I'm Black Lives Matter," would even come up with anything. No, it was a clean shooting. And so I can go to John Hurley and say, "I know that you posted, your last post was literally abolish the police, right? Part of the Black Lives Matters movement of 2020. I can't go to him and say, "Hey, guess what? We got rid of a qualified immunity, now your family can sue for $700,000. How do you feel about that?" He's gonna be like, "I want my life back, bro."
Right. Yeah.
But if I go and say, "Hey, guess what? We abolished the police," he's gonna be like, "My life actually mattered," right? Because now it's truly something that matters. I think I would give my life for that same reason, but it doesn't matter. Money doesn't matter. And so you have people in law enforcement who maybe do fail at their own professional careers that go into law enforcement. And so you're going to have people that might have mental health issues. We know law enforcement has any first responder, not just law enforcement, has huge mental health issues. I don't care about money. So when you say get rid of the, bonds, yeah, it happens. The family gets $1 million, but what about that person? Does it really end? I thought it was going to change in 2020 after the Black Lives Matter movement. It would change. And
Marcus and I have had long conversations about the fact that many of these movements really don't want to affect any true change, right? We posted some black squares on Instagram. People wrote some words on some intersections, but the war on drugs continues. The police state still continues. Cash bail still continues. So you kind of set yourself apart from the other three LP hopefuls because you're the first one that's been on here that says that you want to abolish the police. Mike Termott was a former police officer. And we had a good conversation with him regarding law enforcement. We definitely had some good conversations with Chase regarding criminal justice reform. Really didn't get into that, I don't think, Marcus, with Lars, did we?
No, not really.
Yeah, we got more into taxes.
Lars is 100% on board with eliminating
qualified immunity. And you're right. I mean, Josh, it is a hard thing. I was thinking about this today about here, I don't know if you heard the ads on the radio and television about if you drank the water at Camp Lejeune, you can get all this money, right? And apparently, I think the contaminant in Camp Lejeune was similar to what is currently going on in Ohio. And I was sitting there thinking, while monetary compensation for damages isn't perfect, we can't give someone back their life. And so it's the best thing somewhat our civil courts can do in recourse, right? Is we have to somehow, that's what we do, is we assign a monetary value to things. So that's an interesting take, man, because you're the first one that has said that, here. So maybe we'll find some other things that set you apart too. Where are you on, for instance, on tax reform, taxes. Like as if Josh is president of the United States, he's directing the Congress. Really all you can do is either veto or sign legislation or attempt to work with them to direct the legislative process, right? What does President Josh say to a Congress divided over taxation in America?
Well, yeah, I could definitely not sign things, or I could just not pay them, right? So
Right.
you could effectively shut down government instantaneously at any point in time too. So I think I'm a little bit different of a candidate. I think that our current system just needs to be reformed until
Okay.
we clear out the deficit, right? And so you do your taxes, you're going to either pay 0, 10, 20, 30%. If you buy and sell homes, that capital gain will just count towards income. For corporations, it's just going to be the same thing, 0, 10, 20, 30% based on your income levels with no opportunities for subsidies. And so all deductions just go away. And so at the end of the day, when we shrink down government, right, we have billion-dollar sectors, maybe even like Homeland Security, right?
Okay.
The DEA, all those programs that just suck money, right? Once we fix the deficit, the deficit's down to 0. What do we do now with all this extra cash? Guess what? It gets refunded right back into your pocket. That's exactly how it's going to be. It's not going to be, oh, we get to increase our salaries. Nope, you didn't spend it. It gets refunded right back. And so I think that's how every state should be right now.
Yeah, I mean, state governments are doing pretty good about it. The issue that we have currently with Congress and we have with deficit spending is we haven't passed a budget in I don't know how many years. We just do continuing resolutions and, omnibus spending bills. And no side really wants to actually, I think, pass a budget because we have really difficult conversations we have to have legislatively speaking, right? At the end of the day, we have more money going out than we have money coming in. And the three largest things that we spend our federal revenues on, Medicare, Social Security, and defense all have some protectionist racket around it that doesn't want to touch it, right? If you mention Social Security reform, you get the left saying you're going after seniors. If you want to reduce, Medicare oversight, you get people saying, oh, you want to go after the poor and the sick. If you talk about reducing defense spending, you have defense contractors and people like that saying, oh, we're going to make ourselves vulnerable. China's going to take over the world, So we have a really simple math problem that's made difficult by personalities, right? So you're saying maybe the best thing that a president can do in that sort of thing is just essentially not pass anything and say, figure this out. And if you don't bring me something that works, I'm just not signing it. That's the president that I'm going to be. Like I'm here to highlight the dysfunction. Would that be something you kind of agree with? Like that if I paint you that picture? Yeah.
Right. You're going to save money immediately on things like ending war. And so military spending just goes out the door. And so if you think about 1.5 trillion in defense, money that was passed recently, that's money that just that we never spend the next year. Right. And so it's hard, right? So trying to figure out where to spend money and not spend money. That's definitely one thing we just get rid of. That's a huge savings right there.
Well, so let me ask you.
Go ahead, Marcus.
Let me ask you. Based on that last course of the conversation, are we an oligarchy or a republic? In your opinion?
Yeah. What is Josh's take on what kind of government we have?
I can't say definitively of what the wish is, right? I wish we were a republic, right? I wish states have their own individual rights, but that's just not the case. We're just a country that, in my opinion, the rich just get richer, and so they prioritize themselves more so than other people, and I think that they're just smarter about it. So I would definitely say oligarchically, but
I would say so too. I think we're like a corporatocracy is kind of what I consider the current modern day American government is. I mean, big business loves big government and big government loves big business, and they seem to work together to create protectionist moats and embargoes around them. For instance, in my state in Arkansas here, Josh, Walmart is headquartered in Arkansas, right? And kind of illustrate a moral hazard of government. We have federal spending that creates EBT benefits for people, right? And Walmart is the largest recipient of that revenue. Okay. So we spend our tax dollars, you and I do. This funds a social program that funds private profits right? And then when Walmart hires individuals, you talked about labor reforms. When Walmart hires people, they take them and pay them less wages because they can then use the social programs to basically subsidize their labor. So Walmart benefits on their bottom line from both sides, from the input from those programs, and then of course on saving on labor cost. And what's the common denominator there? It's large government. That's the issue. Like, you wouldn't have a Walmart in the way that it currently exists without large government. And so when you kind of explain that to people, and especially like you talked about talking to Gen Z, what I found when I was running for Congress is when I talk to voters, typically, I could kind of break them into three groups. If I talk to kind of established voters that I would say were Gen X or above, that they had had a rigorous party mentality and had always kind of voted that way, right? When I talked to millennials, they were, I guess, more open to entertaining possibly new ideas. The challenge with kind of Gen Z is that right now the truth is the radical left, I guess you would call them. I don't really call them. I hate using the term liberal because I'm a big believer in classical liberalism. I think that tempered with conservatism, it works pretty well. But they're the quote unquote radical leftists have really kind of just made this more about feelings than logic, right? So how do you think that President Josh can sell liberty as a solution to Gen Zers?
Yeah, a lot of people confuse libertarians with liberals, so it's interesting. But I think millennials in general, right, are heading towards liberal. Gen Zs are actually not. They're stuck in the middle, but they're trending towards more conservative.
Okay, interesting.
And so when you're speaking to Gen Zs, it's just funny though, right? Because Marcus, you're a Gen Z, you said, right? And so Gen Zs.
He's a Gen X, man. Marcus is the old one of the Black Powder.
Oh, you're a
podcast.
Gen Xer. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So Marcus, what year were you born again, Marcus?
7 Deuce.
7 Deuce.
Okay.
So I'm 82. So Josh, when were you born?
84. Yeah.
84. Okay, so you're in this little micro generation. We figured it out. We're Zillennials. Zillennials. It's like the only micro generation in like 100 years. So you are also part of that. Now you know. So
I thought you were just seriously, Marcus. I was Wu-Tang Gen Z. I was just like, this guy really.
No, dude, Marcus.
Interesting fact. Most of the people in Wu-Tang Clan are older than me.
Right.
So
yeah.
I'm from the golden age of hip hop, and Wu-Tang Clan didn't raise me like it raised millennials, but Wu-Tang Clan influenced me so much so I sent my son to Staten Island to go to college.
Nice.
So,
I was a Tupac guy. I was a Tupac guy, man. Like in high school, high school, Marcus, I had a Tupac like button on my backpack, and I had to change schools between my junior and senior year. I had to go to a different school, and I still had it on there. And like the first day, the principal was like, "You have to take that off your backpack." And like, of course, Michael White being the rebel he always was. I felt like my First Amendment rights were being trampled. You know what I'm saying?
That's when I was like, libertarian right there.
Yeah, exactly.
I would like sneak it into school and then put it back on my backpack, like, because he was only on the first floor of school, and I went to a big school my senior year that had like 5 floors. So I was like, he won't see me up here in science lab.
I knew you were fancy. I always knew you were fancy. The guy from Arkansas went to a 5-story school. Mine was 1-story here in Southern California. You went to a 5-story school.
I went to the second largest high school in Louisiana, and it was second largest only by like 5 students in the graduating class that year. So, and the largest high school at the time was a private school in like New Orleans. And I'm pretty sure maybe my alma mater might be the largest high school now in Louisiana. But anyway, so Josh, back to kind of the campaign stuff. As we move forward toward convention, this is a numbers game. You have to capture, I believe, over 600 delegates to get the nomination. What is your plan for doing that?
Yeah, I have to do what I'm doing right now, visiting folks in their state, doing the web conferences, and so I have a meeting with a libertarian party in Virginia. So I'm going to be meeting with those folks. I'm going to be like, hey, I need your vote of confidence just to get the nomination, right? And so
sure,
when we move into I'm nominated in the Libertarian Party, my big reach right now is going to be focused on the key topics. When I say abolish the police, I'm hoping for the black vote. When I say, abolish ICE, I'm hoping for the Hispanic vote. When I'm say I'm a millennial, I'm hoping for the millennial votes. When I start talking about ending war and my appreciation for science as a scientist, I'm really trying to capture that Gen Z vote. And so I'm going to be utilizing social media a lot. And so I think that when we're starting to connect the world together, that's the way it's going to be. But to win as a libertarian, I figured it out. It would cost $3.6 billion.
Okay,
for a
interesting.
libertarian to win.
I tell you what, let's break that math down. Kind of how did you arrive at that number?
$24. You should spend $24 on each person.
$24
to
worth of
connect with them.
impressions.
That's what it would take.
Yeah.
Okay, I
interesting.
have a question. What are you gonna do to get the Michael White vote?
Yeah, what are you gonna do to get my vote? Yeah.
I just have to be myself. Social media is definitely gonna, be able to connect with the Michael White vote. Just speaking to that generation, places like Twitter, you can post one video and then, it can reach literally 6 million people.
Sure.
And so all you have to do is just have a voice. That's what I'm hoping with the Libertarian Party, is just be able to speak, engage people, to understand the world around them. And you do it by telling the truth and being yourself. As a Democrat, a lot of the topics that I care about with the Second Amendment, you really couldn't do that. As a Republican, you really couldn't talk about topics related to law enforcement, and so it just hurts inside. As a libertarian, you can just really free yourself and your mind and your body, right? Just to explain that when you're real, like a real person, you're going to connect to people in a different way.
Yeah. I mean, authenticity is definitely appreciated more and more by voters. In fact, there was a recent survey from, I think, 2019 or 2018, kind of after the Trump effect had happened, that, voters, they, what was most important, and authenticity scored very, very high. As we've gotten into the social media world, people want to see that you're a real person. They more appreciate that. And I had a lot of people when I ran that reached out to me and said, I voted for you because I thought you were just a real guy. You would engage me like somebody else would on social media. You're not always just a photo op in a suit. You're just a real guy. You're doing the same things I'm doing. And so it was very beneficial. So you mentioned you're a scientist. Okay. So what is your background kind of in science wise?
Yeah. Undergraduate degree in biochemistry, graduate school in chemistry.
Okay.
But I've worked in the chemical sector. I've destroyed chemical weapons for the military. I had a chance to visit Los Alamos National Laboratory, where they make nuclear bombs, right?
Yeah.
And so I've been exposed to so many things just in my professional career, that it just like gives me a different perspective. I spoke with Blue Origin recently, and we were talking about what they do, what their science is about. It's interesting, by 2050, we can consume all the lithium in the whole entire world, right? It's a finite resource, just like oil is. And so what do we do when we can't drive electric cars? We know we can't drive gasoline cars. So, what's the future technology? And so when we start talking about super fuels in harvesting the moon, how do we get there by 2050? Is that even going to be prioritized in someone's campaign?
Sure.
I understand it in a different way. And so science to me, it's just like interesting. And that's just kind of like when I say scientists, those are the sorts of topics that we talk about. My campaign.
That's a good bridge topic there. Where do you stand currently on the energy discussion? Okay, because there's what I've seemed to find for most people is there's kind of like all oil or all EV, right? There seems to be very little nuance available out there anymore in that discussion, at least when it comes to just voters. Where do you kind of fall on what is the next 20 years of energy usage, development, and creation in the United States look like?
Yeah, I can definitely say this. I am opposed to nuclear power, and I think.
Oh damn! You lost my vote.
It's quite okay, and I think when you're a Democrat, right, you can't tell the truth about oil and environmental issues, and so
sure.
I talk about I visited the university locally, and I would participated in the climate change debate there.
Okay.
And it was a mixed conversation, right? Because a lot of the people were, very left environmentalist, but it's hard just to get rid of natural resources like gas. And so you could see the administration trying to do it right now through regulation and calling it safety issues. But the truth of the matter of fact is they're sending it overseas. And so if we ever get into a situation where we need to be in a war, our national oil reserves are meant for our military. It's not meant to give
That's
it
correct.
away.
It's meant for the
Yeah.
common defense of America. That's right.
And so
So being a
yeah, so-
libertarian and being a free market person, if the government was out of energy, okay, other than as much out of energy as it could be, which is again kind of the libertarian perspective, where do you think it would naturally go? Do you think that nuclear would not be adopted naturally, or do you think that we would just continue the addiction to quote unquote oil because it works and we have the infrastructure? Where are you on subsidies for EVs right now? Right, like I think we're subsidizing about $7,500 a piece. I know it's kind of three questions I'm kind of hitting you with here, but this is an interesting discussion. You have a background in
yeah,
science,
I see where
I
you're
think
going
people
with
would like
nuclear.
it. Yeah.
Would we all go back to fires and
Yeah.
sticks and
Yeah. It's an
Yeah.
interesting discussion because, I've been asked many times, how does a free market deal with energy, right? And that's
Yeah.
really the question is how would a free market deal with it?
you could think of an atomic bomb, right? It's not nuclear bomb anymore. It's like a hydrogen bomb. It's
Okay.
like hydrogen bomb's more explosive than a nuclear bomb is, right? And so when we think about super fuels, supposedly there's this big stockpile of super fuel on the moon. How do we get it and mine it? Those sorts of things. But
Are you talking about like
in my
helium-3 or
city-
something?
yeah,
Or like
helium-3, yeah.
tritium or yeah.
In my city right now, a while ago, they were building nuclear triggers, and so there was a fire in their facility. And what had happened was the plume went all the way across, contaminated all this land into Denver, and got a whole bunch of people sick. And this was not too long ago. And so even recently now, I don't know if you heard about it, Oak Ridge National Laboratory had another fire. They're saying it's okay, like these fires don't, nothing's wrong. But, we know that the military, the army, the government is not responsible with lands. And so even when you think about mining uranium, it's going to be associated with fracking sometimes. And then now you have water supply that might be contaminated. And so in general, I would never want someone to go into a coal mine, let alone a uranium mine. And so it's, and then you have to dispose of it. So you have all this nuclear waste. Right now, they're just literally just sticking it in a hole in the ground saying it's fine.
I mean, and so I'm gonna play a little bit devil's advocate here because I am a very pro-nuclear individual. You could take all the nuclear waste that currently exists in the world, and it would fit into a football field about 6 feet deep. It's incredibly, as you know, because you're a chemist and have a background in science, it's incredibly energy dense, which is the reason why I think in a free market, it would be what would happen in the power grid. I think that people would be looking for the densest and most available, distribution they could, especially, near large population centers. But obviously, I think that solar and wind would probably be really good for decentralized grids. Are you kind of a fan of decentralized grids? I mean, for, smaller communities, like municipalities having essentially, neighborhoods built and they have kind of their own grid and their own storage, and the residents kind of, a pro rata pay for that basically.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a mess, right? So you think solar panels, you think, oh, just put them in a field. Well, in a city, that field is owned by the cities. They're going to want to give that away in a subsidy to some business so they can generate some tax dollars on each item, or they're going to want to develop it for a community and get tax dollars out of construction. And then some people would say, I don't want a solar power field when I drive down my street because it's ugly. And so you get in this debate, well, where do we put solar? Solar is best for people's homes on top of their houses.
Sure.
But it's just so darn expensive right now that it's not possible. But when you think about free energy, you could have solar panels on every single house in America, and there's your energy right there. But you're going to run into problems with batteries still, all those sorts of issues. it's going to be a big thing by 2050, which is just down the street. And so
Right.
nuclear energy is definitely an option, but you have countries that are banning it right now. Germany is in a war with Russia, basically, and they're like, we don't care that we can't get natural gas from Russia. They're still getting natural gas from Russia.
It seems pretty. I definitely wouldn't use Germany's decision making right now in energy as anything to kind of want to envy.
Oh, Europe, yeah, they're banning everything in Europe.
Yeah, and we can get into a long talk about the conspiracies behind that, possibly, or whatever else. But it's an interesting conversation. So also on your platform here, I'm looking at your website. You have healthcare as kind of one of your highlighted issues. Where do you kind of stand on healthcare reform? What do you foresee like the best course of action for that?
Yeah, I'm probably a little bit more democratic when it comes to healthcare. I don't think there should be a lot of profit associated with healthcare. I get frustrated with pharmaceutical companies, and so when I'm president of the United States, I'm gonna get rid of patents for pharmaceutical companies, and so
Okay.
that's one way to save Americans money. But it's a long journey to figure out what's the best approach. And so I'm like a process engineer, so my mind goes, we need to make it more efficient, and finding ways to do that. You have a choice in healthcare wherever you go, so those companies exist, but how do we create a process where it's more efficient? So that's just like my main goal. There's definitely ways to do it, but my main thing is we're not going to be spending money on the military anymore. And so United States can really allow science to be free, abolish the FDA, right? Let science be free, and then start really focusing on cures for HIV and finding cures for cancer. I'm not saying that the government has to pay for it or mandate, a cure for cancer, but we're going to definitely connect with countries all over the world and refocus our priorities.
Well, you bring up a good point about you bring up a very good point about patent law. I think that pretty much every libertarian that you might meet at convention would be willing to discuss that, and probably agrees that evergreen patent laws in pharmaceuticals are kind of bullshit, right? Because ultimately speaking, they're a protectionist racket created by government that protects profits and again artificially inflates them domestically, right? I mean, so there's a big thing right now. The Biden administration is we've capped insulin at $35 a unit for Medicare. They haven't capped anything, as you well know. They're only going to pay this. The pharmaceutical company is going to shift the cost to the private sector for the Delta. And meanwhile, you could go down to Mexico and get a unit of insulin for $3. And but the Americans don't have access to it because of evergreen patent laws on biologics, right? Which is a government protected racket. When you talk about like improving the system and eliminating the FDA, are you a proponent of just an absolute ban of the FDA? Like I'm personally don't believe that we need the FDA at all. I don't think that it's necessary at all. I think that medical professionals would make good decisions without centralized government oversight. Are you just totally for abolishing it, or do you want to abolish and replace it?
I don't. In my mind, I haven't thought of a replacement. So
okay, all right, fair enough. Yeah,
I think I'm like abolish the FDA. Back in the day when people were getting sick with hey, you're pregnant, take this medication and your nausea will go away. So there was reasons for it. So there was like a whole thing about dyes. There were like metalloids like killing people basically. And so the FDA had a purpose. I don't see the purpose now. It's really just more of a hindrance for progressing science in general. Your doctor
I would argue purposely it exists to just protect profits now. That it is the FDA is funded by big pharma. That's where they get a lot of their budget from, right? And so I mean, let's say that I'm the drug company and Josh, you're the FDA, and I'm paying you to oversee me. How hard are you really going to oversee me, right? I mean, like how much are you really going to give me some flack about something, ultimately?
Yeah, exactly. But it's controlled by Congress too. So we're talking about like this weird dark money going to Congress first, then trickling back. So it's bad.
All right, so we're gonna kind of. I'll wrap. You got a question, Marcus? Go ahead.
Yeah, I would say government at one point had a purpose, and that purpose no longer exists. If you're looking at the holistic aspect of all of the problems that afflict Americans in general, it's government you could always go back to as the root source of those problems. And Like I saw with Josh, what he was on another podcast and he was talking about the FDA and how they eliminate small business and small research firms from doing God's work, which is to find cures and not treatments. That's what's going on with these government agencies because of the lobbyists and the fact that Congress only is beholden to corporations at this point. And
Yeah,
that's
ultimately,
what,
right? Yeah.
yeah, that's what the difference between libertarians and the duopoly is libertarians aren't going to be beholden to the corporate interest. And that's why candidates like Josh need to be elevated in this discussion, the national discussion that we're having.
We talk a lot here,
Yep.
Josh. We've often said, I think Marcus and I have that government is like a gremlin. Remember the movie Gremlins? Everybody wants a government. Ultimately speaking, I mean, I know we have some anarchists in the party every now and then. There's anarchists in every party, to be honest. But most people, if you ask the average Joe, most people want a government. They want somebody to secure the rights they're born with, right? And that's like the cute little gremlin. That's the cute fuzzy one that everybody wants. But it comes with rules. Like, you don't feed it after midnight. You don't do this. And in our government, there were some rules. It was like, hey, don't get in entangling foreign alliances. Don't let money pollute your political system. Don't create a duopoly that gives an illusion of choice. If you do that, it's going to get really bad, like in the movie. And that's kind of where I think we are. Is a good idea that started and it's just kind of spun out of control, and now they're hanging off the window and pulling everything down. And it's like we're in the climax of that movie essentially when it kind of comes to government. I'm going to give you like some quick stuff, and then we can kind of wrap this up. I know you got places to be. So on the Second Amendment, is Josh a limited law guy? Like, hey, there should be small regulations, or do you believe all gun laws are infringements? Kind of where are you at with that?
Yeah, I think that everyone should have an AK-47 and 230 round clips.
Okay.
It's a universal round. You can just take it anywhere in the world with you. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
Some ammo off the ground. You got to own 9mm, very universal round, and 2 grenades. So you have to have at least 2 grenades.
Okay, fair enough. All right, next kind of hot wire question. Where are you on decriminalization of substances? Are you for decriminalizing all substances at a federal level, or are there some you think that just should still be on a schedule?
Yeah, I think when you think of police alternatives, like what's a police alternative, finding ways to do that, that's the easy one. Legalize all recreational medicinal drugs. And so I'm curious if Coca-Cola will sponsor me. I want to put cocaine back in Coca-Cola. So I'm still waiting for that to happen. And
one of the big things that libertarians get attacked on sometimes when other candidates paint us with a wide brush is that we want everyone on drugs. And I think that could be no further from the truth. Is that most libertarians I know are some of the most sober-minded and clear thinking individuals I know that are not here to promote drug use. They just understand that drug prohibition doesn't work, right? Here's kind of a tough question for you. Where do you stand on the issue of abortion? And do you have a nuanced approach to it? Are you unapologetically pro-life? Are you unapologetically pro-choice? Kind of where does Josh stand on that issue?
Yeah, that's great. Safe injection sites are fun to talk about. So is abortion. The libertarian platform actually doesn't define abortion at all. It just says that each person has their own liberty and choices, and I kind of fall on that. Science wise, I kind of follow the opinion of Planned Parenthood. From a personal perspective, being raised as Christian, I'm very pro-life, and so when you think about the death penalty, I'm very opposed to it. And so I'm going to be finding more ways to keep our population strong. It's not the government's choice, but I want people to have that choice. I don't want you to go to college and say, hey, I got, I have a baby, do I want to finish college or have an abortion? And so that those sorts of things do frustrate me. It's, but when you start looking at these fights state to state, what's the last point in time that you can have an abortion? It gets tricky, right? Because that's where people get frustrated. It should be 0. New York thinks it's 10 till the very end. And
Like
so
2 weeks later, these kind of things, like, like here it is, and here now we're going to make that decision. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. This is just kind of so people can kind of understand where Joshua Rodriguez's mind kind of is on some of these issues. And
Yeah.
sort of like kind of the last one, when you talk about defense spending, are you for shutting down all foreign bases, moving everybody back, ending all the wars, or would you think that there's some strategic places in the world that we should still be that maybe need to be slowly unwound? Kind of where are you on on that kind of topic?
Yeah, I was looking at the women that do like the pageants, like Miss Universe, and I think all of them kind of say, world peace, and people laugh at them, and it's just like, I find that honorable. Like, that's my
Okay,
opinion,
sure.
is to world peace is more important. I think if we can unite the world in a different way, um I think, because I think a lot of the conflict is really mostly about money. And so when you think about countries like Haiti, the issues related to that, it's all about money. When you look at Taiwan, and those sorts of conflicts, um, but we're going to have countries that kind of like, China might want Taiwan, or other countries they want to consume. And so that becomes a threat. Could we actually move all those bases, get rid of them all, and really go towards no nuclear weapons completely, and then have world peace? That's my goal. I want to try it out. We're going to get
Okay.
rid of every single nuclear weapon. We're going to ask Russia and China to do the same thing, right? Iran
See, I'm
might
for like
step up
having
and
all
do
the
the same
nukes.
thing.
I think that America should have like 70 million nukes. Like we should have
We
just
have
all.
one nuke for every base in the world,
Yeah,
so they're all playing it.
and I think we should have more. Just have a domestic defense where we're non-interventionists, but if you mess with anything of ours, like, I think that we could reduce the military budget by about half, but still be, pretty strong when it comes to those kind of things. So Josh, we're gonna be wrapping this up here. Marcus, you got any other questions for Mr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to go back to the war on drugs.
Sure,
And
good one.
why, like, why can't a guy have an AK-47 and smoke a joint? That can't happen on a federal level, but you can have an AK-47 and drink as much wild turkey as you want. And anybody that knows anything about wild turkey, it's just nothing but debauchery that follows you breaking that seal on a bottle of wild turkey.
I mean, obviously, I think even like statistically, we all know that alcohol is probably the most dangerous drug to society. If we had to rank them, right, the one that costs the most people.
Yeah, when you think about consuming drugs, right? Like, could someone on meth totally handle a weapon? That's a remain to be seen. I don't think that's. But if you have a person that also has a weapon who's sober, there's a contentious problem going on. But I think in general, recreational medicinal drugs are going to be regulated in some sort of way, right? You're going to go get a prescription from your doctor. It's not going to be high dose of fentanyl. So automatically, by making it legal, you're basically eliminating overdoses, which has been an epidemic in our world.
And you're undercutting the profit motives that kind of fuel narco-terrorism and fuel southern border issues, and
all kinds of crime.
It really is. I mean, ultimately speaking, society has to have a discussion about what kind of relationship it wants with drugs, because they're not going anywhere. And it's, do we want to pursue the same, things we've done, or we want to do something different? So Josh, where can everybody find you on social media? I know that your website is, I will say it out for everybody, Joshua4Unity.com. That is FOR Unity.com. You're on other social media platforms though too, right?
Yeah. You can go there and find me on my social medias, but Joshua Jarrett is my social media outlets. But yeah, I'm on Pinterest, right? Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. I'm on all those places. But I'm
so for
I'm
the
trying to
listeners
reach
at
the
home,
community.
if you want to find Joshua, if you go to at Joshua Jered, Jered, because there's going to be people who are going to listen to this, at Joshua Jered. He has a link tree right in his Twitter profile that gives you all of his socials. He's on TikTok, YouTube. He got an Amazon store, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, got all the things. Well, Josh, thanks for being on the Black Powder Podcast tonight. We really appreciate you being here. We always wrap this up kind of the same way. Marcus, do you want to take us off air today?
I want to thank Joshua for coming on. This was, we completed our collection of all the current LP presidential hopefuls, and this was freaking awesome. I want to thank my co-host Michael White. You know, my heart extends to you all of 900 to 1100 miles away you are. Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
Marcus.
Mike.
It's the same way back here. And so I would like to, before we give our sign off, I want to give Josh, Josh, give us the 30-second elevator pitch on why you should be the LP nominee.
Yep, I'm a president for the people. So when we look at all the issues that are going on in the world, whether it's laws, regulation, the government, the bureaucrats are continually increasing, grabbing that power. And so my aim ultimately is to grab that power and give it back to the people. It's really just that simple. So I really encourage people to look at my platform, give me a follow, because I'm always talking about my ideas. But that's who I am, and that's my goal. So I appreciate the vote and the vote of confidence from the Libertarian Party, and I thank you guys for having me today.
Well,
It's been a
Joshua,
super pleasure to
I
have
want to
you.
ask that you share this with your constituents and followers, that let them know that this Black Powder podcast is on the side of libertarianism, and we're bringing you the best libertarian candidates possible, including yourself. And
Yeah,
with
it's been an honor
that,
to have you on. Thanks for being on with us, man, for sure.
and with
You
that,
guys are welcome.
we, as we say in on the Black Powder podcast, live free
Or
or
die.
die.
There you go. Take us off air, Marcus. We'll see us next week, right? So
Next week. Thank you.
that's right. Thank you very much.
Hasta luego.